It is rare to see the Sabbath day fall on New Year's Day. Seeing the New Year start on the Sabbath day, I believe that it is a sign that God will surely pour out many blessings this year. God teaches us through the Bible that the Sabbath day is a day to be blessed. Everyone, what is the most blessed thing to hear someone say on New Year's Day? Traditionally in Korea, isn't it common for people to say to each other, "Receive many blessings" on New Year's Day? Isn't it very meaningful, since this Sabbath day starts with a blessing? Therefore, today we will study God's Word with the sermon titled, God's Blessing on the Sabbath Day. Let's take a look at the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28. Let's read God's Word in Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 1. If you fully obey the Lord your God and carefully follow all His commands I give you today, the Lord your God will set you high above all the nations on earth. All these blessings will come upon you and accompany you if you obey the Lord your God. Verse 3. You will be blessed in the city and blessed in the country. The fruit of your womb will be blessed, and the crops of your land, and the young of your livestock, the calves of your herds, and the lambs of your flocks. Your basket and your kneading trough will be blessed. You will be blessed when you come in, and blessed when you go out. The Lord will grant that the enemies who rise up against you will be defeated before you. They will come at you from one direction, but flee from you in seven. The Lord will send a blessing on your barns and on everything you put your hand to. The Lord your God will bless you in the land He is giving you. The Lord will establish you as His holy people, as He promised you on oath, if you keep the commands of the Lord your God and walk in His ways. Then all the peoples on earth will see that you are called by the name of the Lord, and they will fear you. This is not all. Let's move on to verse 13. The Lord will make you. What will the Lord make you? The head, not the tail. If you pay attention to the commands of the Lord your God that I give you this day, and carefully follow them, you will always be at the top, never at the bottom. Do not turn aside from any of the commands I give you today, to the right or to the left, following other gods and serving them. Ultimately, if we do what is written in Deuteronomy chapter 28, God will surely allow us to live a blessed life. You will be blessed when you come in, and blessed when you go out. The fruit of your womb will be blessed, and your kneading trough will be blessed. A life of obedience to God's Word is the key to bring the greatest blessing and happiness into our lives. I ask you once again to please engrave these words on your hearts today. Through the book of Genesis, we can understand that the Sabbath day, which we are keeping today, is a day God appointed to bless us. People say that if something joyful happens on the first day of the year, joyful things will happen throughout the year. And if something sad happens on the first day of the year, sad things happen throughout the year. Although this is not coming from God, it makes me think God must have let this year start on the Sabbath day so that God's blessing can follow all the children of Zion throughout the year 2022. We may be blessed when we come in and when we go out. This providence of God must be hidden in appointing the Sabbath day on New Year's Day. This thought came to my mind while preparing God's Word to deliver for today's worship. Let's see which day God appointed as the Sabbath and how God commanded us to keep it. Let's read from the book of Genesis, chapter 2, verse 1. Let's read God's Word in chapter 2, verse 1. Thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all their vast array. By the seventh day God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day he rested from all his work. Here, we can see two words stand out: the seventh day and rest. For 6 days God created mankind and all creation, and then he rested on the seventh day. Because it was a day God rested, this day is called the Sabbath, which means to rest. Let's see what is the will of God contained in this day by going to verse 3. And God blessed the seventh day. What did God do on that day? God blessed that day, and he also made that day holy. And made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done. This is what the Bible teaches us. According to what is written in the book of Genesis chapter 2, the seventh day has an incredibly special meaning. Everyone, doesn't your birthday have a special meaning? If you don't prepare a special meal for yourself on other days, don't you prepare at least one special dish on your birthday? On your birthday, the sun doesn't rise from the west and set in the south, does it? Nothing changes on your birthday, but you regard it as a special day because it has a special meaning. The first day, the second day, the third day, the fourth day, the fifth day, and the sixth day are all important. However, God put a very special meaning on the seventh day. God made that day holy. God appointed that day as a day to give a blessing since the time of creation. In the time of creation, God appointed this day as the Sabbath day for us to come to God, worship God, and receive a blessing from God. Let's move on to God's Word in the book of Exodus, chapter 20. Exodus, chapter 20, verse 8. Here, what does God command us to do? Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. Who is speaking here to mankind? God inscribed these words on the tablets of the Ten Commandments so that we would not forget them. Then which day among the days of God's creation does the Sabbath day fall on? God said, remember the Sabbath day, which is the seventh day. What else did God command us to do on top of remembering this day? God commanded us to keep it holy. These are God's absolute words that show us that God appointed this day to bestow His blessing on all mankind. In order for blessings to overflow, where should we always dwell? We should dwell in God's Word. God's blessings come upon us when we obey and keep God's Word. Some may ask themselves, God said that this year would be a truly blessed year, yet why is it that my life is so tiring and weary? We need to reflect upon ourselves carefully. Am I doing anything that is pushing away God's blessing? Has there been any moment when I wasn't obedient to God's Word? When I obey and follow God's Word, I can be blessed when I come in and when I go out. The day that God has appointed to bless us is the Sabbath day. Then what day of the week does the Sabbath fall on in today's weekly system? There are churches that keep Sunday worship, and there is a church that keeps the Sabbath on Saturday. The churches that keep Sunday worship outnumber the church that keeps the Sabbath. People say, isn't Sunday the day to go to church? However, what did God say concerning the Sabbath day in the Bible? God said, remember the Sabbath day. We say to people, God made the seventh day holy and appointed that day to bless us. When we tell them this, They say, "What's the big deal whether we worship God on Sunday or on Saturday? The day is not important." If the day weren't important, why would God have appointed the day, the seventh day, and even told us to remember that day? It is an important part. To better understand this matter, we need to look at what God taught us through the offering that was lifted up by Cain and Abel. Let's turn to God's word in the book of Genesis chapter 4, verse 1. Adam lay with his wife Eve, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Cain. She said, "With the help of the Lord, I have brought forth a man." Later, she gave birth to his brother Abel. Now Abel kept flocks and Cain worked the soil. In the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord. But Abel brought fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. The Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering he did not look with favor. So Cain was very angry, and his face was downcast. This is a very important story in regard to how we worship. Cain worshiped God, and Abel also worshiped God. However, God accepted only Abel's worship, whereas he rejected Cain's. It is because there was something wrong with Cain's offering. Let's find the answer in the book of Hebrews chapter 11. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 4. By faith, Abel offered God a better sacrifice than Cain did. By faith, he was commended as a righteous man when God spoke well of his offerings. And by faith, he still speaks, even though he is dead. How was Abel's sacrifice compared with Cain's? By offering a correct sacrifice to God, he was commended as a righteous man. The sacrifices made in the Old Testament pertain to the matter of worship in the New Testament. God rejected Cain's offering, yet he accepted Abel's offering. There is a worship that God accepts, and there is also a worship that God rejects. In regards to this, we need to carefully examine this matter once again in great detail. Here it is written, God spoke well of his offerings. Since Abel was a man who kept flocks, he offered a worship to God with the firstborn of his flock. And Cain offered the fruits of the soil to God. We can find the reason why God accepted Abel's sacrifice and rejected Cain's offering in the book of Hebrews, chapter 9, verse 22. In fact, the law requires that nearly everything be cleansed with blood, and without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness. Abel's sacrifice was a sacrifice offered with blood, and Cain's sacrifice was a sacrifice offered without the shedding of blood. Wasn't Cain the firstborn of Adam, who was expelled from the Garden of Eden, and Abel his second-born son? Since the forgiveness of sins could never be given without the shedding of blood, and the lost paradise could not be restored without the forgiveness of sins, God instructed Adam's two sons to offer a sacrifice with blood. Abel accepted it with an obedient heart and offered a sacrifice with blood to God. However, Cain, following his own opinion, offered God a sacrifice with the fruits of the soil. This is why God accepted Abel's sacrifice and rejected Cain's offering. Today, many churches that are as numerous as the sand on the seashore claim to worship God. However, God appointed the Sabbath day. God did not appoint any other day. Then shouldn't we be the ones who correctly find the Sabbath day and keep it? Let's read God's word from the book of Leviticus, chapter 10, verse 1. Aaron's sons, Nadab and Abihu, took their censers, put fire in them, and added incense. And they offered unauthorized fire before the Lord, contrary to his command. Verse 2. So fire came out from the presence of the Lord and consumed them, and they died before the Lord. Aaron's family was a family of priests. When Aaron's sons Nadab and Abihu, who were the priests, entered the tabernacle to worship God with unauthorized fire, fire came out from the presence of God and consumed them. Because of this, they died before the Lord. This clearly shows that a worship that is offered, not following the decrees, statutes, and laws of God, will not be accepted by God. Whenever the priest put fire in the censers and entered the tent of meeting, it had to be from the fire on the altar of burnt offering. However, the fire Nadab and Abihu took inside was not the fire from the altar of burnt offering. Thinking, it's the same fire, so what's the big deal? They took the fire from a different place with them and entered the tabernacle. As a result, fire came out and consumed them. Let's read the book of Leviticus, chapter 16, verse 12. He is to take a censer full of burning coals from the altar. The altar means the altar of burnt offering before the Lord, and 2 handfuls of finely ground fragrant incense, and take them behind the curtain. Whenever a priest entered the tent of meeting, they had to bring the fire from the altar of burnt offering. They carried out various rituals, such as the burning of incense. Let's read God's word in the book of Numbers, chapter 16, verse 42. But when the assembly gathered in opposition to Moses and Aaron and turned toward the tent of meeting, the tent of meeting means the tabernacle. Suddenly, the cloud covered it, and the glory of the Lord appeared. Then Moses and Aaron went to the front of the tent of meeting, and the Lord said to Moses, "Get away from this assembly, so I can put an end to them at once." And they fell face down. Then Moses said to Aaron, "Take your censer and put incense in it, along with fire from the altar." Here, the altar means the altar of burnt offering, along with fire from the altar, and hurry to the assembly to make atonement for them. Wrath has come out from the Lord. The plague has started. Through God's word in the book of Leviticus chapter 16, verse 12, and the book of Numbers chapter 16, verse 46, we can understand that there was a clearly defined regulation that the priest should bring the fire from the altar of burnt offering when entering God's tent of meeting, that is, the tabernacle. However, according to God's word in the book of Leviticus chapter 10, Nadab and Abihu brought unauthorized fire before God. Thus, the manner in which they worshipped was wrong. It wasn't the way God had instructed them. The reason why I'm delivering these words today is to explain that the worship day and the regulation for worship God commanded are this important. Nadab and Abihu are like what we would call pastors who carry out a ministry today. Was Aaron's family an ordinary family? Wasn't his family a family of priests whom God selected by making his dry staff sprout? Although his family was such a great family, God destroyed them because they didn't follow his regulation. Then what about the Sabbath day, which we are keeping today? Some say there are churches that keep Sunday, and there is a church that keeps Saturday. We just need to worship God on any day. What day we worship on is not so important. However, the Bible and God regard the day of worship as very important. Then shouldn't we also have faith to regard it as important? God appointed the 7th day as the Sabbath day. Then what day of the week is the 7th day in modern times? We can understand it easily when we take a look at the calendar which we use in our daily lives. In the calendar, the order is Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Which day comes in the first column? Sunday does. What about the last column? Saturday comes in the last column. In the calendar, the first day of the week is Sunday, and the seventh day of the week is Saturday. Some might ask, isn't it different in other countries? Sunday is the first day of the week. This was not made randomly by people, but the weekly system has an origin. Originally, the Bible called the days the first day, the second day, the third day, the fourth day, the fifth day, the sixth day, the seventh day. However, names were given to those days in later times. That's how the first day was given the name Sunday, and the seventh day was given the name Saturday. In today's weekly system, the seventh day in the Bible is Saturday. It's not Sunday at all. The dictionary, too, defines that Sunday is the first day of the week, and that Saturday is the seventh day of the week. In Webster's dictionary, Sunday is defined as the first day of the week, and Saturday is defined as the seventh day of the week. Some might ask, all these things were made by men. Can you show me what the Bible explains about the seventh day? Yes, we can. Let's take a look. Let's read God's word in the book of Mark, chapter 16, verse 1. When the Sabbath was over. What day is the Sabbath day? When the seventh day was over. According to the weekly system, a week consists of 7 days. Therefore, after the seventh day, it goes back to the first day. The order goes the first day, the second day, the third day, the fourth day, the fifth day, the sixth day, and the seventh day. And then aren't those days just repeated again? Let's read chapter 16, verse 1 again. When the Sabbath was over, in other words, when the seventh day was over, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome bought spices so that they might go to anoint Jesus' body. Very early on the first day of the week, just after sunrise, they were on their way to the tomb, and they asked each other, "Who will roll the stone away from the entrance of the tomb?" But when they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had been rolled away. This is the scene that depicts how Jesus rose from the dead. Let's continue by going to verse 9 and see how the Bible expresses the day on which Jesus was resurrected. When Jesus rose early on the first day of the week, doesn't it mean that Jesus was resurrected on the first day of the week? Among 7 days, on which day was Jesus resurrected? He was resurrected on the first day of the week. It is clearly written in the Bible, Jesus rose early on the first day of the week. When Jesus rose early on the first day of the week, he appeared first to Mary Magdalene, out of whom he had driven 7 demons. Jesus was resurrected on the first day. He was not resurrected on the seventh day. Today it is common knowledge that Jesus was resurrected on Sunday. Then if the first day of the week is Sunday, the seventh day of the week is, of course, Saturday. God already stated this in all the gospel books of the early church. God said that he rested on the seventh day. Did he ever say that he rested on the first day? God stated over and over that we must remember the seventh day by keeping it holy. Therefore, the worship day God commanded us to keep is the Sabbath day, the seventh day. Let us all keep in mind that Sunday, which is the day Jesus was resurrected, is the first day of the week, not the seventh day of the week. Let's turn to Exodus chapter 31. Exodus chapter 31, verse 13. Say to the Israelites, you must observe whose Sabbaths? My Sabbaths. This will be, what will it be? A sign between me and you for the generations to come, so you may know that I am the Lord who makes you holy. It is written, you must observe my Sabbaths. The word must shows just how incredibly important the will of God is. It means that the Sabbath day is God's regulation that we must keep. God proclaimed, this will be a sign between me and you. Those who keep the Sabbath day will become my people, and those who don't will not be my people. Let's read God's word in the book of Ezekiel chapter 20, verse 20. Keep my Sabbaths. How should we keep it? Holy. That they may be a sign between us. Then you will know that I am the Lord, your God. As is evident through the words written in the Bible, those who do not keep the Sabbath day cannot become God's people. Although Nadab and Abihu were priests, God destroyed them because they went to worship God with unauthorized fire. That is to say, with a different manner of sacrifice, which God didn't command. Cain offered a sacrifice with a different kind of offering which God had not commanded, because he thought to himself that it would be a better offering. However, God rejected his offering. We must find and restore the Sabbath day, which God commanded us to remember. The Bible teaches us that when we correctly find the truths of God, one by one, and dwell in the will of God, He will give us all many blessings through the Sabbath day. Some people might say, many churches keep Sunday worship. Can't the people who worship on that day in those churches also call unto God with their mouths and lips? Cain offered worship to God just like Abel did. However, he was rejected by God. Jesus came to this earth 2,000 years ago and gave us an answer to this by saying, you worship me in vain. Jesus let us know that neither the forgiveness of sins nor salvation nor the kingdom of heaven can be given to us through Sunday worship. Let's go to God's word in the book of Luke chapter 4, verse 16. He went to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, and on the Sabbath day, where did he go into? He went into the synagogue, as was his custom, and he stood up to read. The scroll of the prophet Isaiah was handed to him. Unrolling it, he found the place where it is written, the Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he has anointed me to preach good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to release the oppressed, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. On which day did Jesus go into the synagogue? On the Sabbath day. Whose custom was it to worship on the Sabbath day? It is recorded that it was Jesus' custom. Jesus even came to this earth in order to set an example for us on how we could remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. It is so unfortunate that other days that are not the Sabbath day have been accepted as if they were the day to worship God. This really came into effect from around the year AD 321. The Roman Emperor Constantine proclaimed in AD 321, all judges, city people, and craftsmen shall rest on the venerable day of the sun. This is how the edict to rest on Sunday was issued. Mithraism, which was a religion to worship the sun god, was very prevalent in the Roman Empire. The day which the people offered worship to Mithra was on Sunday. As Sunday worship began to infiltrate Christianity, little by little. Ultimately, Christianity came to accept the practice of Sunday worship. Everyone, we did not appoint some random day as the day to worship God. It was God who appointed the day to worship Him. Let us study all the teachings of the Bible carefully and obey God's word until the day we enter the kingdom of heaven. I pray that God's blessing will come upon all our Zion family members throughout the year. Thank you very much.